Old York Hospital was built in 1896 to serve the farming district and is on the site of a convict depot opposite the town cemetery. The hospital was used mainly by poorer residents. Wealthier people were nursed in their own home, where surgery was carried out on the kitchen table or in the patient's room. The building is now owned by the National Trust, which leases it to the state government as a youth hostel. In January 1980, a group of 5 adults and 28 children from a little athletics club 144 kilometres away travelled to York Hospital for a camping holiday. But their holiday was to become a nightmare.
We were told not to go upstairs at all.
Did you go upstairs at any stage?
Yes, we went up the first night. The reason we went up the first night, because it was such a very, very hot time, and the children were very hot. And I suggested, if we had a look upstairs, being up high, there may be more breeze coming through for the children to sleep up there. And, of course, Paul and Mrs. Kramer went upstairs, but when they came downstairs, they were very pale, and they said there's something wrong with the place up there.
We went up there with torches, and we got midway along the dormitory, and our torches went out. We had this howling wind coming down from the chimney, and with 47 degrees outside, there was no way that there could have been any wind.
We walked past the fireplace in the middle of the room, and both our torches went out. Now, at first I thought it was just my torch blowing, so we walked back 3 or 4 times, and again they went on and off, you know, corresponding as to when we're in front of the fireplace, and there again when we sort of came past the fireplace. But again, every time we walked in front of the fireplace, about 2 or 3 metres, they actually went off and came back on again.
It's very hard to explain. These things happen, you know your torch has gone out, and you know the other person's torch has gone out. We sort of looked at the torches to see if there's anything wrong with them. As I say, they came back on their own accord.
There was a foul smell which came from the small attic which was up the top. To me, it smelled as something dead, sort of like a dead animal or something. A very, very foul stench.
They said, well, you couldn't put the children up there because there's something strange up there. And then we're sitting there for a while, and this terrible moaning noise started. Well, at first you'd say it was the wind, but then when you look and you say, well, there wasn't any wind. It was so hot and still at York. So it wasn't wind, but then it got louder, and it was a definite sound of a woman crying, in pain, moaning.
It was a definite noise, which wasn't the rustle of the trees, it wasn't any wind, and the only way you could explain it was as a moaning.
It was frightening. It was very frightening because you'd swear there was someone up there in terrible pain. But I mean, because there wasn't anyone there.
Why did you not leave then?
Well, we're in a position, to be honest with you. As I said, we hired a bus, and Maureen's husband was kind enough to take the day off and drive us there, and he was to pick us up in a week's time, and that's all we could do. We had no transport there. We didn't have a car. Little did we know these kind of things would happen. I mean, you wouldn't have gone in the first place, would you?
But at this early stage, did you think the building was haunted, or did you think something else?
Mrs. Kramer had thought the place was haunted. And, of course, I said, don't be stupid. You're imagining. The imagination's running a little bit wild here. And, of course, Paul said to me, you know, Mum, there's something definitely wrong here. Well, the first thing that happened that morning, Maureen and I got up to get the children's breakfast. We went into the kitchen. We got the milk. And I had this crockery jug, which I put on the bench. And I walked across to Maureen. And the next thing, out of the corner of my eye, I could see this jug lift and come across, just float straight across the room at it.
I just stood there watching it. I couldn't believe my eyes. It moved and it came to the end, and instead of toppling off like things normally do, it just floated.
It was very hard to believe. And of course, I thought then, well, it didn't just fall on the floor, it definitely floated. And of course, Maureen and I stood there shocked. We were shocked. Then the next thing, the stove would turn on and off. While you were using it, it had just turned itself on and off. It was a very queer thing that kept happening in that kitchen.
Did anything else around the place move?
Yeah, and the doorknobs. You'd be standing outside and they'd be spinning. Just absolutely spinning. And there was nobody else on the other side or anything because we checked all that. But they were just spinning, the doorknobs spin.
For some reason, I was just walking past the main staircase, which went upstairs, and came to my notice, and getting one of the ladies, there seemed to be blood coming from within the staircase, sort of running out on the outside of the staircase. The actual lady tasted it to check that it really was blood, and she said it was, and it definitely looked like, I didn't personally taste it, but she did, and she said it definitely tasted like blood, and it certainly looked like blood. It was trickling out at probably a constant rate. It sort of, if I was sort of to try and give you a quantity, it probably would have been, if I mopped it up, I might have probably filled a full face cloth type thing if I mopped it up.
Well, the worst thing that happened there, we had a little girl there and she was running along the hallway. And the next thing she screamed, and of course when she came down to us, her wrist was cut right open. Terrible gash she had.
The girl was actually somehow thrown through the window, arm first. She, I think, from memory serves, she had 12 or 15 stitches inserted in her arm.
Now this little girl, she's only a little tot, that's all. It would be impossible for her to fall and her arm to go through that glass. It was too high for the child.
How high was the glass from the floor?
Probably at 3.5 to 4 foot.
How tall was the girl?
Well, she was only about 8 years old, probably 4 foot herself.
They had to get a plank of wood and smash the glass out. It's the only way you could get it out. So we couldn't work it out.
Did you only hear the moaning the once?
No, the moaning was every night. And it even got to the stage where a couple of afternoons, where I was left with the children by myself, a couple of children, it continued then. But it was every night.
You know that there are people watching saying, what a pack of nonsense.
Oh, yeah. We've sort of been through this before. It just, things happen, you sort of tell them as you see them.
But this really did happen?
Oh, yeah.
The 3 witnesses say the frightening phenomena continued at York Hostel for 4 days without anyone seeing a ghost. But they suspected the disturbances were coming from the locked room upstairs, where Paul Harrison and Maureen Kramer first experienced a foul smell and cold wind. Legend has it that in the old days, patients who had died and those who were about to die were kept together in that section of the hospital. Locals call it the morgue or dying room. And it's said that on certain nights, the ghost of a former matron who died violently at the old hospital can be heard moaning as it wanders along the upstairs wards. On the final night of their stay, something happened which forced the 3 adults to gather their courage and pay a last visit to the dying room on the top floor.
I saw what I can only describe as an apparition on the stairs. It's just like a fleeting object. I can't really describe what it was. All I know is it absolutely petrified me.
She said to me, there's something floating up the staircase. Because as we turned around and looked at her, her face had changed completely. You'd never recognise the woman. At first I got frightened. I would have said the woman had had a stroke because her face was so twisted you wouldn't have recognised her.
Apparently, from what I can gather, I knew nothing else for a few minutes, and then we heard this almighty bang.
An extremely loud explosion seemed to come from, well, you know, very close. Originally we thought it was a gas heater or a water heater or something blowing up.
I had to investigate. I couldn't work it out. But I only got to the second landing and a terrible feeling came over me, like pins and needles, and I couldn't move. And you felt very, very old, like you'd aged. I felt like I'd aged. But then the pins and needles left me, but I didn't continue. I came back down. Paul and Mrs. Kramer continued up and looked in this small room.
It was open. It had actually blown open and it was fixed right the way back. The bolt was back and the lock was off.
Did you get any sensation while you were there from that particular room?
Yes, I couldn't put my foot over the threshold. I felt nauseated every time I went near the place. It was uncanny.
It was only a very, very small room and it didn't appear to be anything in there, but the smell was still in there.
I was going to go and ask for help to take these children out that night because I said I can't stay here another night, but we had to. There was nothing more we could do.
What did you in fact do then?
Well, we all went into the one room. I know it's going to sound silly, but we had, one of them had a baseball bat, cricket stumps, and even one of the ladies had a can of pressure-packed fly spray. I know it sounds so stupid. What we're going to do with it, I don't really know, but then we had, well, everything was quiet for a while, and then this friend was with us. She was laying on the bed and she started screaming out, they've got me by the throat. And of course we said to her, wake up, you're having a sleep, but she wasn't asleep. And of course when we turned the light on, I said, you've only had a sleep. I said, it's been too much for you. But when we looked, there's definite marks on her throat. And of course I think that was the last straw. I mean, that definitely, she said she had me by the throat and there was definite marks on that woman's throat. She said to me, don't go on your bed, there's something at your window, Joan. And I said to her, no, I said, there's nothing at the window. But I did, I pulled the curtain back and there was the figure at the window.
Can you describe it?
It was a very big woman, very, very big woman, like matronly sort of a woman. And all you can see, it was the body, the head, but her arms were folded like that. Yet I lifted the curtain, and it shows you what shock does to people, because I must have been in shock. I just kept staring at it. Then I put the curtain back, and I said to him, there's nothing. No, I thought, no, I'm not seeing it. So I laid on the bed, and I thought, no, I've got to look again. And I did look again, and it was still there. The next morning, we were up, out, and waiting for that bus.
I really can't give an explanation. A lot of things just happened. I've got no explanation whatsoever. I'm absolutely stumped.